The station was silent in the way only deep space could be. Not empty, not calm, but controlled. Every light was placed with care. Every wall was smooth and pale, without marks, without history. The air felt filtered not just for breath, but for emotion. Eli Harper stood alone in the center of the diplomatic chamber, hands relaxed at his sides, posture straight but not stiff. He had been trained for this moment for years. Training rooms on Earth, simulations, long talks with people who spoke about alien psychology like it was math. Still, nothing had prepared him for the quiet pressure of being watched by minds that did not think like his own. The observers were hidden behind the walls, not physically, but socially. Their kind believed distance was safety. They did not show themselves unless required. They did not touch. They did not raise voices. Their entire civilization was built on restraint. Eli breathed in slowly. He reminded himself of what he represented. Humanity was new to the galactic stage. Too new. Other species had watched from afar for decades before making contact. Humans had reached outward quickly, loudly, and with hope that made older civilizations uncomfortable. Hope was risky. A soft tone echoed through the chamber. A signal. The evaluation was about to begin. Eli opened his mouth to speak, to begin the prepared words approved by 12 committees, when the door behind him slid open. He did not turn right away. He assumed it was an attendant or a translator drone. The sound, however, was different, slower, intentional footsteps, human footsteps. He turned. She walked in confidently, not rushed, not careful. She moved as if she belonged in the room, as if the unseen eyes were nothing more than background noise. Her name was Mara Lynn, though most people on Earth knew her as a cultural specialist, not a diplomat. She was something new. That was why she was here. Mara stopped a few steps away from Eli. She looked at him, really looked, as if checking whether he was still himself after standing alone for so long. Then she smiled. Not wide, not playful, steady. Without breaking eye contact, she reached up and loosened the clasp at her collar. The outer layer of her formal clothing slipped down her shoulders and fell to the floor. Then another layer followed. Each movement was calm and deliberate. Eli felt his breath catch, not from desire but from surprise. This was not in the plan. Around them, sensors spiked. The observers reacted instantly. Emotional fluctuation, breach of protocol, unexpected behavior. Mara was aware of all of it. She continued anyway. What remained was still modest by human standards, but different enough to make a point. Humans did not hide behind endless layers when honesty was needed. They did not fear being seen. She stepped closer. Eli stayed still. He trusted her. That trust was part of the strategy, though no one else in the room knew it yet. Mara reached up and placed her hands lightly on his shoulders. She leaned in and kissed him. It was brief, firm, clear. Then she pulled back. The room did not explode. There was no alarm, no sudden movement, but the silence changed. It deepened as if the station itself was processing what had just happened. Mara turned her head slightly, speaking not to Eli but to the unseen watchers. "We do not come armed," she said calmly. "We come connected." Eli finally found his voice. "This is my colleague," he said. "She is here to help you understand us." Behind the walls, the observers struggled. Their kind had no equivalent for the gesture they had witnessed. Physical closeness was reserved only for reproduction, and even then, it was clinical and distant. Affection, as humans defined it, did not exist in their language. The kiss could not be categorized. Was it dominance? No, there was no submission response. Was it bonding? Possibly, but bonding was permanent in their culture, not spontaneous. Was it emotional display? That was dangerous. Their data systems flagged humanity as unstable. Mara sensed the tension even without seeing it. She picked up her fallen outer layers and folded them neatly, placing them over a nearby chair. The act was small, respectful, grounded. She turned back to Eli and nodded once. "Continue," she said softly. Eli did. He spoke of Earth, of oceans and cities, of noise and quiet, of conflict and cooperation. He kept his language simple as instructed, no metaphors that required shared history, no jokes that could be misunderstood. Mara remained beside him, close enough that he could feel her presence without looking. It steadied him. The observers noticed. They noticed that his heart rate slowed after the kiss, that his voice became stronger, that his emotional signals stabilized. Connection increased performance. This was unexpected. When Eli finished, there was a long pause, longer than normal. Then a voice filled the chamber, smooth and emotionless, translated instantly into human speech. "You display behavior that contradicts survival logic." Mara stepped forward. "Yes," she said, "we do that." "Explain." She smiled again, softer this time. "Humans survive together," she said. "We learned long ago that being alone makes us weaker, not stronger, so we touch. We reassure. We remind each other that fear is shared. That creates vulnerability," the voice replied. "Yes," Mara said, "and resilience." The observers exchanged silent signals among themselves. Their models had never accounted for emotional reinforcement as a stabilizing force. Emotion was something to be reduced, not relied upon, and yet the data was clear. Eli and Mara were calm, alert, present. The evaluation continued with questions about governance, about technology, about conflict resolution. Eli answered where he could. Mara stepped in when the questions turned toward culture, toward behavior that could not be measured in numbers. She spoke of families, of friends, of strangers helping strangers without reason. The observers listened. Somewhere deep within their systems, something shifted. When the session ended, the lights dimmed slightly, a signal that the humans were dismissed. As they walked out together, Eli let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. "That was not in the briefing," he said quietly. Mara laughed softly. "No, it was." "Are we in trouble?" She glanced back at the chamber doors, now sealed behind them. "No," she said. "They needed to see it." "See what?" "That we are not afraid to be human," she replied. They walked down the corridor side by side, footsteps echoing in rhythm. Behind the walls, the observers reviewed the recordings again and again. The moment of the kiss, the calm that followed, the strength that came not from isolation but from connection. Humanity had just taken its first true step into the galaxy, and it had done so unarmored, unashamed, and unafraid. The corridor felt longer on the way back. The lights were the same soft white, the floor the same smooth metal, but Eli felt different. His body was still calm, yet his thoughts moved fast. He kept replaying the moment in the chamber, the way the silence had changed, the way the unseen watchers had reacted without sound. Mara walked beside him with the same steady pace. She did not rush and she did not slow down. To anyone watching, she looked relaxed. Inside, she was listening. She always listened. To tone, to space, to what was not being said. They reached their assigned quarters and the door slid open without a sound. Inside, the room was simple. 2 sleeping units, a shared table, and a wide window that looked out into space. Stars drifted slowly past, distant and cold. The door closed behind them. Eli let himself sit down. "They didn't stop us," he said. "I thought they might." "They won't," Mara replied. She removed the rest of her outer clothing and placed it carefully aside, returning to comfortable station wear. "Not yet." Eli looked at her. "You're sure that worked?" Mara leaned against the table. "It did what it needed to do." "It broke their expectations." Eli nodded slowly. "They were watching everything." "Yes," she said, "and that's why it mattered." Behind the walls, far from the human quarters, the observers had gathered, not in one room but across linked chambers and data nodes. Their bodies remained still, but their minds moved quickly through shared thought patterns. They replayed the recording again. The entrance, the removal of layers, the kiss. They paused the image at the moment of contact, physical closeness without aggression. No signs of dominance, no submission response, No threat signals, instead stability increased. One observer flagged the data, another questioned its validity. Emotional behavior was unreliable. That was known, but the numbers did not lie. The human male's stress indicators dropped by nearly 30% after the contact. Cognitive clarity increased. Speech patterns became more confident. Connection improved function. This did not align with known survival logic. A senior observer introduced a new variable. Humans may be dangerous not because of strength, it suggested, but because they adapt socially faster than projected. That thought spread quickly through the network. Danger was usually measured in weapons, ships, or energy output. Humanity ranked low in all three compared to established civilizations. Yet here they were, altering the emotional balance of a controlled environment without resistance. The observers made a decision. The next phase would begin. Eli and Mara were summoned again, sooner than expected. The signal tone came less than an hour later. As they walked back through the station, Eli noticed subtle changes. The lights adjusted more quickly to their movement. The air felt warmer. Small things, but deliberate. "They're testing us," he said quietly. "Yes," Mara replied, this time more closely. The chamber was different when they entered. The open space had been altered. The walls were closer, the lighting softer, chairs had been added, the environment felt almost comfortable. That alone was unsettling. A voice spoke immediately. "You will remain here for an extended observation period." Eli glanced at Mara. She nodded slightly. "We understand," Eli said. "No tasks will be assigned," the voice continued. "No instructions will be given." Mara smiled faintly. "You want to see what we do when nothing is required, correct?" The connection ended. Time passed. At first, Eli felt awkward. He sat, stood, then sat again. The silence pressed in. He knew they were being watched more closely than before. Mara, however, seemed at ease. She sat on the floor, legs crossed, and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked at Eli. "Come sit," she said. He hesitated, then joined her on the floor. They sat quietly, not staring at each other, just sharing space. Minutes passed, then more. Eventually, Eli spoke. "When I was a kid," he said, "I used to think space would be louder, more dramatic." Mara smiled. "Me too." "They're listening," he added. "Yes," she said, "but they don't understand this part yet." "What part?" "This," she replied, gesturing lightly between them. "Being comfortable without filling the silence." The observers noticed. The humans did not grow restless. They did not show signs of stress. Instead, their emotional readings leveled out. Their proximity created a stable loop of reassurance. This was deeply troubling. Another observer introduced a controlled change. The lighting shifted slightly cooler. Air pressure adjusted. Minor discomfort. Eli noticed it and frowned. Mara reached out and rested her hand on his arm. "It's okay," she said quietly. His breathing slowed. The observers paused the adjustment. Touch reduced discomfort response. They pushed further. A question appeared in the air, projected as text rather than sound. "Explain your reliance on physical reassurance." Mara looked up at the words. "It's not reliance," she said. "It's communication. Communication can occur without contact." "Yes," Mara agreed, "but contact adds meaning." Eli nodded. "It tells us we're not alone. That someone is here with us." The observers processed this. Their kind evolved to avoid dependency. Independence was survival, but humans seemed to thrive on shared presence. Hours passed. The humans talked, rested, shared simple meals. They laughed quietly at one point, a sound that caused several observers to momentarily disconnect in confusion. Laughter had no clear function, yet it strengthened group cohesion. At one point, Eli grew quiet. His thoughts drifted to Earth, to the blue of the oceans, to people who would never know how important this moment was. Mara noticed immediately. "You miss home," she said. He nodded. She did not speak. She simply leaned closer. The observers recorded another spike of stability. Something within their long-held understanding of intelligence began to crack. If humans could maintain emotional health in isolation by reinforcing each other, then their expansion into the galaxy would not follow expected patterns. They would not fracture. They would not collapse under distance. They would adapt. A final message appeared. Your behavior challenges established models. Mara looked directly at the projection. That's how progress starts. There was a long pause. Then something unprecedented happened. The voice softened. Continue, it said. When the observation period finally ended, Eli felt tired but clear. As they were escorted back to their quarters, he spoke quietly. They're changing, he said. Yes, Mara replied. They're learning. About us, she shook her head. About themselves. Behind the walls, the observers reviewed all collected data: emotional reinforcement, physical reassurance, shared presence. They reached a conclusion none of them had expected. Humans were not unstable. They were balanced differently. And that difference could not be ignored. As the station lights dimmed for a cycle meant to simulate night, humanity's quiet strength settled into the heart of the alien station. Not with force, not with fear, but with connection. And the observers, for the first time in their long history, wondered what it might be like not to face the universe alone. The next cycle began without warning. The lights in the human quarters shifted slowly from soft night tones to a pale morning glow. Eli woke first. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then he saw the stars through the window, endless and silent, and the memory returned. They were still being watched. He sat up quietly. Mara was already awake, sitting near the window with her knees pulled close, looking out into space. She did not turn when he moved, but she spoke anyway. They changed the schedule, she said. Eli rubbed his face. How do you know? The lights, she replied. And the silence, it's different. He joined her at the window. Far beyond the station walls, distant ships moved like slow thoughts across the dark. None were human. They're planning something, Eli said. Yes, Mara agreed. Another test. As if responding to her words, the room shifted. The temperature dropped slightly. The air became thinner, not dangerous, but uncomfortable. The door remained closed. A voice filled the room, calm and even. You will now experience separation. Eli's heart jumped. Separation. Before either of them could speak again, a transparent barrier rose silently from the floor, sliding between them. It locked into place, dividing the room cleanly in half. Mara and Eli stared at each other through the barrier. This is not isolation, the voice continued. You will remain within visual range. Eli stepped closer to the barrier. You're separating us to see what happens. Correct. Mara raised her hand and placed it flat against the barrier. Eli mirrored the movement on his side. Their palms aligned, separated only by clear material. This is new, Eli said quietly. Yes, Mara replied. They want to see if connection still works without touch. The observers focused their attention fully now. This was the most important test yet. Time passed slowly. At first, Eli felt restless. His body reacted before his mind did. The lack of physical closeness felt wrong in a way he could not easily explain. He paced a little, then stopped, forcing himself to breathe. Mara stayed still. She met his eyes and held his gaze. It's okay, she said. We're still here. Her voice grounded him. He sat down across from her, barrier between them, and nodded. The observers recorded increased stress but not collapse. Humans adapted quickly, shifting from physical reassurance to visual and verbal connection. This adaptability was concerning. Hours passed. The environment changed again. Lights dimmed further. Sound dampening increased. Even the low hum of the station faded. The silence grew heavy. Eli closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them and spoke. Tell me something real. Mara smiled softly. Define real. Something about you, he said. Not the role, not the mission. She considered this. The observers leaned in. I'm afraid of deep water, she said finally. Eli blinked. Really? Yes, she said. I grew up near the ocean. Everyone thought I loved it. I respected it, but I was always afraid of what I couldn't see. Eli nodded slowly. That makes sense. Your turn, she said. I'm afraid of being forgotten, he replied without hesitation. Not dying, just not mattering. Mara's expression softened. The observers noted something unusual. Emotional disclosure reduced stress even without physical contact. Connection did not require touch. This challenged another assumption. The voice returned. Your exchange serves no functional purpose. Mara looked up. It serves every purpose. Explain. When we share fear, she said, it becomes lighter. When we name it, it stops controlling us. The observers processed this. Fear was something to be eliminated in their culture, not shared. They increased the pressure. The barrier darkened slightly, becoming less transparent. Visual clarity dropped. Eli felt his chest tighten. They're taking sight now. Mara leaned forward. Eli, listen to my voice. I'm here, he said. So am I, she replied. They spoke softly, keeping a steady rhythm. Simple words, memories, familiar things. The observers detected something alarming. Even with reduced sensory input, the humans maintained emotional balance by anchoring to each other's presence. This was resilience beyond expectation. Another observer suggested escalation. The station simulated isolation signals, the kind used to induce discomfort in long-term solitary species. Eli flinched, his hands clenched. Mara noticed immediately. Breathe with me, she said, slow like this. He followed her rhythm. The signal's effect weakened. The observers halted the test. They could not push further without risk of failure, not human failure but their own. The barrier retracted slowly, dissolving into the floor. Mara stood and crossed the space between them without hesitation. She did not touch him right away. She simply stood close. Then she placed her forehead gently against his. Eli closed his eyes. The observers recorded a full return to baseline stability within seconds. No technology achieved this effect. Only connection. The voice returned, quieter than before. Your species demonstrates unusual resistance to psychological fragmentation, Mara smiled. We don't face things alone. You are dependent, the voice said. Eli opened his eyes. No, he said calmly. We are cooperative. The observers paused. Words mattered. Dependency implied weakness. Cooperation implied choice. This distinction had not existed in their models. The humans were escorted back to the chamber later that cycle. The room was larger now, open again. The walls pulled back. The environment felt less controlled. That too was deliberate. A new presence filled the space. Not a voice this time, but a form. A projection took shape in the center of the room, tall, abstract, non-threatening. This was the first time the observers chose to be seen. Eli felt a surge of awe. Mara placed a steadying hand on his arm. We greet you, the projection said, not as subjects but as participants. Mara inclined her head slightly. We appreciate that. You have altered our evaluation parameters, the entity continued. Your methods of resilience contradict established survival theory. Eli spoke carefully. Survival isn't just about enduring, he said. It's about supporting. The projection tilted slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity. You risk emotional harm, it said. Yes, Mara replied, but we accept that risk because the alternative is worse. Which is? Isolation, she said. The observers shared a complex exchange of thought. Their species had survived for thousands of cycles by avoiding emotional entanglement, yet they had stagnated. Innovation slowed, cultural growth plateaued. Humans, by contrast, advanced rapidly, chaotically, together. The projection spoke again. Your approach suggests a different path, Mara nodded. We don't have all the answers, but we face the unknown side by side. Silence followed. Then something unprecedented occurred. The projection stepped closer, not invading space, simply reducing distance. Eli felt a chill of recognition. They're trying, he whispered. Mara smiled. Yes, they are. The entity extended a form, stopping short of contact. If connection strengthens you, it said, does it weaken us? Mara considered carefully. Only if you believe strength must be solitary. The projection withdrew slightly. We will consider this, it said. As the session ended, Eli realized something profound had changed. The observers were no longer just watching. They were learning. As the humans returned to their quarters, the station felt less cold, not physically but emotionally. Systems adjusted more gently, transitions softened. Behind the walls, ancient minds questioned ancient truths. And humanity, without force or threat, had begun to rewrite the rules of survival itself. The station entered a new rhythm after that meeting. Eli noticed it first when the corridors no longer felt like narrow paths, meant only for moving from one place to another. The lights followed their steps more gently now. The air adjusted without sharp changes. Even the silence felt less heavy, as if it was waiting instead of watching. Mara noticed it too. She did not comment right away, but she walked with a different ease, her shoulders relaxed, her attention open. Something had shifted. The observers were no longer hiding behind distance alone. They were curious. That curiosity came with risk. The next summons arrived later than expected. Not immediate, not urgent. That alone made Eli uneasy. "They're thinking," he said as they walked toward the chamber. "Yes," Mara replied, "and thinking is harder for them than watching." The chamber was open again, wider than before. The projection appeared almost at once, clearer this time, its shape more defined. It still did not resemble any living thing Eli recognized, but it felt present in a way it had not before. "You have introduced instability," the projection said. Eli stiffened slightly. Mara remained calm. "Yes," she said, "we tend to do that. In your history," the projection continued, "instability leads to conflict." "Sometimes," Eli replied, "but it also leads to change." The observers listened closely. This was no longer an evaluation. It was a conversation. "Our civilization values predictability," the projection said. "It preserves order and limits growth," Mara said gently. There was a pause, longer than before. "You assume growth is desirable," the projection replied. Mara nodded. "Without growth, systems weaken, they stop adapting. Eventually, they fail." The observers exchanged internal signals. Their records showed no collapse, no extinction events, no great failures. They had endured, but they had not changed. The projection shifted again. "You propose connection as a stabilizing force, yet connection also creates dependence." Eli stepped forward slightly. "Dependence is not the same as trust," he said. "We choose who we rely on. That choice matters." The word choice echoed in the chamber. Choice implied freedom. Freedom implied unpredictability. The observers had avoided both for centuries. To test this idea, they introduced a new condition. The chamber changed. Walls moved inward, forming smaller spaces. Not cages, but separate areas. The projection explained calmly. "You will interact with others of your kind, individually." Eli frowned. "Others." The walls became transparent. Beyond them, Eli could see other humans, members of the broader delegation, scientists, engineers, cultural aides. Each stood alone in a similar space. Separation again, but different. Mara met Eli's eyes. "They want to see if what we showed works beyond us." Eli nodded. "Then let's show them." The observers initiated mild stress conditions, conflicting information, delays, uncertainty. Not enough to cause harm, but enough to test emotional response. At first, confusion spread. Humans were social, but they were also emotional. Voices rose slightly. Movements became sharper. The observers noted this with interest. Then something else happened. Humans began to talk to each other. Not across the barriers physically, but through tone, expression, and shared understanding. Small gestures, familiar signs, smiles, nods. Someone laughed quietly. Another human responded with a gesture of agreement. A scientist mimed frustration, then shrugged, and others smiled. Stress levels dropped, not individually, collectively. The observers recorded this carefully. Humans regulated each other. One person's calm affected another. One person's confidence spread. Mara spoke softly through the barrier, not to Eli alone, but to everyone. "We've done harder things than this," she said. "Together." Eli felt it immediately. The room felt steadier. His breathing slowed, so did everyone else. The observers adjusted the test again, increasing uncertainty, removing clear timelines, introducing ambiguous signals. The humans responded by forming shared narratives. They reassured one another. They reminded each other of purpose. No one panicked. No one withdrew. The projection spoke again. "Your species distributes emotional load," Mara smiled. "Yes, no one carries it alone." This concept unsettled the observers deeply. Their kind internalized all strain. It was efficient but fragile. A single failure could cascade. Humans absorbed strain across many minds. That made them resilient. The test ended quietly. The walls retracted. Humans gathered naturally, standing close, exchanging looks and brief touches. Nothing dramatic, just presence. The observers felt something unfamiliar, unease. Not fear, uncertainty. The projection addressed them again. "Your approach suggests that isolation weakens intelligence over time." Mara did not argue. She simply said, "Isolation limits perspective." Eli added, "We see better when we see together." Silence followed. Then the projection asked a question no observer had ever asked another species. "What does it cost you?" Mara answered without hesitation. "Pain, loss, disagreement. And yet you persist." "Yes," she said, "because the cost of not connecting is worse." The observers retreated briefly, not physically but mentally. Internal systems slowed as ancient assumptions were reviewed. Their civilization had avoided pain by avoiding closeness, but they had also avoided joy. The projection returned. "We will attempt limited connection," it said. A murmur moved through the human group. Eli felt his pulse quicken. The projection explained. "One observer will interact directly. No barrier." Mara stepped forward. "I will." Eli reached out and touched her arm, not to stop her, just to be there. The observer manifested more clearly now, its form stabilizing into something that occupied space rather than light alone. It moved slowly, carefully, as if unsure of gravity. It stopped a short distance from Mara. "Contact is optional," it said. Mara nodded. She did not rush, she did not assume. She simply stood, open and calm. The observer extended a form, it hesitated. Mara raised her hand, palm open, and waited. Seconds passed. Then the observer moved forward and made contact. It was brief, light, almost nothing. But the effect was immediate. The observer's signal pattern shifted wildly, then stabilized. Data flooded the network, emotional resonance, feedback loops, something new. The observer withdrew quickly, not in fear but in shock. "I experienced amplification," it said. Mara smiled. "You weren't alone in the moment." The observers processed this rapidly. Connection increased sensory richness. Awareness expanded, but so did vulnerability. Yet the observer had not fractured. It had adapted. The projection addressed the chamber. "Your methods carry risk," it said, "but also potential." Eli spoke. "Everything worth doing does." Another pause. Then the projection said something that changed everything. "We will revise our stance on human integration." The words echoed softly. Humanity was no longer being evaluated. They were being considered. As the humans were escorted back, Eli felt a weight lift from his chest. Not victory, not relief, hope. Mara walked beside him, quiet now, thoughtful. "They're at the beginning," Eli said. "Yes," she replied. "Just like we once were." Behind the walls, the observers replayed the moment of contact again and again, not as data, but as memory. And for the first time in their long existence, they wondered not how to survive the universe, but how to share it. The station did not announce the final meeting. There was no signal tone, no formal summons. Instead, the doors to the main chamber opened on their own as Eli and Mara walked past, as if the station itself had decided it was time. They stopped. Inside, the space looked different again, not rearranged for testing, not controlled for observation. It felt lived in. The lighting was warmer. The walls showed faint patterns, subtle marks that suggested history rather than perfection. The observers were there, not hidden, not distant. They manifested throughout the chamber, not as one voice or one form, but as many soft projections. Each held space respectfully, leaving room between themselves and the humans. Eli felt a quiet awe settle over him. "They're not watching anymore," he said softly. Mara nodded. "They're meeting us." The central projection formed slowly, familiar now but less rigid. Its movements were smoother, more expressive than before. "You have altered our understanding," it said. Eli and Mara stepped forward together. "For generations," the projection continued, "we believed survival required distance, control, predictability. We believed closeness created weakness." Mara listened carefully, her face calm and open. "You showed us another model," the projection said. "One where strength is shared." Eli felt a lump rise in his throat. He had spoken to alien minds before. None had ever sounded like this. Reflective, honest. "You were never weak," Eli said. "You just chose safety over growth." The projection accepted this without resistance. "We have reached a conclusion," it said. "Humanity will be granted full recognition within our shared space." A quiet ripple moved through the human delegation behind them. Not cheers, just breath releasing, shoulders lowering. "But there are conditions," the projection added. Mara smiled slightly. "There always are. You will not be absorbed," the projection said, "nor will you be isolated. You will serve as connective agents, bridges between civilizations that cannot yet connect on their own." Eli understood immediately. "You want us to help others learn what you're learning now?" "Yes," Mara nodded, "we can do that." "You will also fail," the projection said. "You will misunderstand, you will feel pain." "We know," Mara replied. "We always do." The projection paused, then said something unexpected. "We request continued interaction. Not demand, not command, request." Eli felt the weight of history in that word. "We don't just show up once," he said. "Connection only works if it lasts." "Then stay," the projection said. The decision was made without ceremony. Humanity was no longer knocking at the door of the galaxy. They were being invited inside. Later, as the humans prepared to depart the station for the first time since arrival, Eli stood by the window again. The stars felt closer now, less cold. Mara joined him. "We did it," he said quietly. "We started it," she corrected. He smiled. "That feels better." Behind them, the projection appeared one last time before departure. "There is one more question," it said. Mara turned. "Ask." "When you first entered," the projection said, "your action caused the greatest disruption. The removal of layers, the physical contact, the kiss." Eli glanced at Mara, then back at the projection. "Yes," Mara said gently. "What about it?" "Was it strategy?" the projection asked. "Or instinct?" Mara considered this carefully. "Both," she said. "We plan, but we're also honest about who we are." "And who are you?" the projection asked. Mara smiled, not proudly, not shyly, just truthfully. "We are a species that steps forward," she said, "even when we're afraid, especially when we're afraid." The projection absorbed this. "Then your presence will continue to disrupt," it said. Eli chuckled softly. "That's kind of our thing." The projection did something no observer had done before. It inclined itself slightly. A gesture of respect. As the humans boarded their ship, the station lights dimmed in what Eli realized was not a simulation of night, but a farewell. The ship detached smoothly. No alarms. No tension. As they drifted away, Mara watched the station grow smaller. "They're going to struggle," she said. "Yes," Eli agreed. "Change always hurts." "But they'll grow," she said. "Yes," he replied, "because now they're not alone." Far behind them, the observers gathered again. But this time, they did not review data alone. They shared impressions, feelings, new experiences that did not fit into old categories. One observer replayed the moment of first contact, not the kiss itself, but what followed. The calm, the stability, the shared presence. Others listened. For the first time, their network did not filter emotional resonance. It allowed it. Across the galaxy, word spread, slowly at first. Whispers through diplomatic channels. Stories shared cautiously. Humans were different, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because wherever they went, connections followed. Species that met humans reported changes. Meetings lasted longer, conflicts softened. Ideas flowed more freely. Isolation decreased. Humanity did not conquer, they connected. On Earth, Eli and Mara stood before a quiet council. No applause, just listening. They didn't give us power, one council member said. They gave us responsibility, Mara nodded. That's always been the real test. Are we ready? Another asked. Eli looked around the room, at faces filled with doubt, hope, fear, and determination. We never are, he said, but we go anyway. Months later, on a distant station orbiting a star no human had ever named before, a small group gathered. Humans. Aliens, different shapes, different minds. They sat together, not perfectly, not easily, but together. Someone spoke, someone else listened, someone laughed, unsure if it was appropriate. A human smiled and nodded. It was enough. Far beyond charts and treaties, something quiet and powerful took root. The galaxy did not become safer. It became braver. And somewhere in the vast dark, a simple truth spread from world to world. Humanity survived not by standing alone, but by choosing, again and again, to reach out.